Hello. Today I'm going to be showing a method for creating custom rule of thirds grids using Blender. You can then use these custom made grids for composition purposes, for filmmaking, animations, storyboarding, whatever you need. First off, I'm just going to delete this cube, and we're going to reset the position of the camera. That can be done in the transform tab, the item tab, after selecting the camera. And I'm just going to rotate it on the X and bring it back to a safe position. So first thing I'm going to do is mess with the camera settings a bit. We're going to change it to orthographic, so that there's no distortion in the grid that we're going to be making. Go into the viewport display settings for this camera, and we're going to turn on the composition guide for the rule of thirds grid. Now, the very important thing to note about this composition guide is that it can change depending on what resolution you have for the output image. So in the output tab here, if you change it to like a perfect 1:1 ratio, so 1080 by 1080, this will change the grid as well, so it'll perfectly match up with whatever ratio you need. For the first example, I'm just going to make a 16 by 9 rule of thirds grid, because that's a very common ratio used in like YouTube videos and such. So first off, let's just add a plane and rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis, not like that. There we go. Let's go into wireframe mode, and the goal is to match up these vertices with the grid, with the composition grid. So just scale it down on the z-axis until it's perfectly matching up with the composition grid, like so. And then we're going to do it the same on the x-axis. You can press shift for slower, more accurate scaling on the axes. And now we have a plane that's perfectly matching with this little center square here. So now let's just extrude each edge like so. And now we have all these lines which perfectly match up with the rule of thirds grid. Now we're going to make it so just the lines are showing up. We don't want the actual planes. Just go into edge select mode. Compress C to bring out the circle select. Just going to select these top edges here. Press X and delete these edges. And then we have to get rid of the plane. So we'll go into plane, select mode, select that, delete the face. We'll have to recreate these edges, which isn't too difficult. I'll go back into vertex, select mode, select any of these vertices here, press F to fill those in, and do the same until we just have our grid. Right, so now we got our grid. Perfect. We're going to be rendering it as a PNG, but if you were to render it out now, you wouldn't be able to see anything because it's just a perfect line. There's no meat to it. So we're going to add a skin modifier. Go into the modifiers tab, add modifier, generate tab, and skin. Keep that as it is. Go back into just solid view. Tab to go into the edit mode, and we're going to select all of these vertices, and we're going to press Control A to scale these down, and this is perfectly fine. This gives us plenty of meat to see the geometry in the final render. I'm just going to add a simple black shader to this with a good roughness. Yep, and that has the material. For our final render settings, I'm going to make sure this is set on standard and very high contrast so that this is a pure black material. And we can render this in EV, we don't need cycles. Go into film. I'm just going to set this filter size to 1 and set it to transparent. And then in our render output tab, make sure it's set on PNG and RGBA so it has the alpha. So now once we render this, hit F12 to render. And now we have our 16:9 rule of thirds grid, which you can overlay over images or whatever. That is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and you can save this out as a PNG. So if you want to do other aspect ratios, let's make like a 4:3 aspect ratio. My favorite aspect ratio, which would be a 1440 by 1080 resolution. That's very, very simple to do. Just right off the bat, I'm just gonna select these top vertices and scale them on the Z-axis, so those are out of the way. It's very customizable. You can edit the grid however, whichever way you like. Just scale these vertices on the Z-axis. Make sure they'll line up perfectly with the grid. And now we have a 4:3 roll thirds grid. There's a website, which I will link in the description, which is very good for finding other aspect ratios. This website here I use a lot for finding various aspect ratios and resolutions to work with. Like it lists very common ratios like 16:9, of course, 4:3. It also has a 185:1, 2:1, and 235:1. It's common cinematic ratios. And you can use these as well. So let's switch back to Blender. Can make a 235:1 ratio, 1920 by 816. And very simple, just scale these, select those middle vertices, scale them down on the Z-axis. And there you got your 235:1 aspect ratio, rule of thirds grid, and so on and so forth. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helped.